right, so Senator Floyd had to go to committee, so we're just going to talk about, a couple of primary issues. I'm sure she's glad to chat with you if you have any specific questions for Senator Floyd, but we're going to talk about, I wanted to make just one remark, and then I know Senator Dossett's available to talk about education. I just wanted to talk real briefly about a bill that went through committee today that was mine, that was about the Open Records Act. So we this week went through a bill for a 10-day deadline on the Open Records Act that would allow for a response from the governmental agency to the requester within 10 days. It doesn't mean they have to fulfill that request in 10 days, but it means they have to let them know they've received that request and respond. So it was interesting, the different people who are excited about that option. And I'd say it brings together some really different folks who care a lot about accountability in government. So I've heard some wide variety of people about that. I just want to bring it up because I think it's really relevant to how we keep track of what's happening up here and in our state government and our local governments. And then I want to talk briefly about budget, that they did come out with the new general revenue estimates. The new monthly numbers were up 20.3% on the year, according to OMES. This is amazing. We're 2% over January of last year. So I think we have huge financial opportunities, and we really need to be looking at how we're investing those monies. I just don't want it to come past as if there's not money there that we need to be working with. We have one-time monies. We have recurring revenues coming in. The Board of Equalization meets tomorrow, and we're expecting it to be big. It might not be as big as what they said in December, but I'm expecting it to be a big increase for next year. And what are those things that we need to be investing in for the future? And I really, our caucus continues to stand for public education, that funding into public education and health and our infrastructure. So just wanted to mention that because I know those numbers are all coming out right now.
Yeah, great description. What's going on? Senator Anna Dossett from Tulsa. I'll highlight just a few kind of big things that happened in my corner of the Senate this week. So first, not just my corner, but the entire Senate passed a bill that would ban gender-affirming care for minors under the age of 18. That was yesterday. Followed about 2 hours of questioning and debate on the Senate floor yesterday morning, and it's on to the House. I understand there's a similar or mirror version of it on the House side as well that just passed Public Health Committee and is on its way to the House floor. It seems as though those two bills might be the designees. There were many bills filed to that effect this session, both in the Senate and the House, but it looks like those are the two that are moving. We also had a couple days ago on Tuesday, we had a private school voucher bill pass out of Senate Education Committee. It had 4 nays, bipartisan nays. 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans voted no for it, voted no on it, but nonetheless, it passed. I believe it's headed on to appropriations before we'll hear it on the floor. I was a nay on that. And then I think the big news today is that we had an education bill drop in the House last night. So I know we're over here on the Senate side, but I was stating earlier that I think this shell bill, which was what it was, House Bill 2775, all of a sudden got filled with language late last night, and we all kind of saw it as we woke up this morning. It seems to be the House's response to the package of Senate education bills that the public got to see probably about a month ago, maybe 6 weeks ago now. The big difference in the kind of the two plans, if that's what they are, is the one on the House side is a big omnibus bill, and so all of the matters are treated inside one bill. On the Senate side, it was rather a package of separate bills. So my understanding is this House Bill 2775, there's already a second committee substitute that the House A and B committee will be working from. We haven't seen that yet, and I hear that the House A and B committee is considering it now or very soon. There's a lot of, I think there's still a lot to read and to learn, and when you have so many areas covered in one bill with such a big fiscal impact as well, I think to the tune of about $500 million. I think it sounds like something that's moving fast. I will note as well that it was not signed to an education committee. in the House, it went straight to A and B, and that differs from what's been happening on the Senate side, which is the package of bills that we're considering over here have gone through Education Committee first before they move on to either A and B or the floor. So that's what's going on.
Can I add something on that? I want to just say that what I've seen with, we'll see with this proposal, but a lot of the proposals we've seen around tax cuts or proposals that have big fiscal impacts really only look at the first year when we talk about them, and we really need to look at multi-year. So for instance, the governor's budget proposal, his tax cuts, he only gave the number for the first year's tax cuts. He didn't give the full year estimate, so it was significantly higher than what he was talking about. I just want to make sure that when we look at these kinds of big proposals that we look at the long-term effect. How's it going to affect our GR, our general revenue in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years? We can't look at this in a vacuum. That's one of my big worries.
Yep. One other notable in the House bill that just dropped last night, there's language about a tax credit for attendance at private schools, tuition at private schools, and that is included all together with everything else. And the Senate so far has chosen to deal with those issues separately. Private school vouchers, or whatever the manifestation is, I tend to call them private school vouchers, have been considered separately in separate bills and not part of a big lump omnibus bill.
Anything else y'all want to talk about?
I want to ask you about taxes. I mean, the speaker on the House side has talked about kind of wanting to do kind of holistic tax cuts, especially with income tax. I know the pro tem has committee, and today mentioned that he has delegates talking with the House and the governor. Of course, they're having their own discussions, but kind of what tax cuts would you be open to? I know you guys talked about grocery, but specifically I want to ask about income tax. You've talked about in the past about wanting to be more targeted, not maybe across the board, but what kind of sense are you getting? What's your caucus taking, and what have you got a sense are you getting from others?
As of right now, we don't have a caucus position, and I think we'd have to look at some more specific proposals. I made some kind of outlandish proposals to try to make a point, which was that very low-income people in our state pay. Our highest tax bracket starts at $7,000 in income, which is very, very low. So I made a statement by making it anyone under $25,000 pays no taxes. Now, I know that that's not realistic in terms of our budget, but I think what we have to look at is that we don't want to just do everything as rebates and credits afterwards. That's too complex for a lot of our taxpayers. They're trying to deal with paying for groceries now. And so I want to see things that are going to really impact the overall system. I'm worried with grocery tax. I like it for simplicity, but I think it's actually doesn't affect all income brackets the same. And so I would prefer to see increasing our bottom tax bracket or a more targeted earned income tax credit increasing. Right now we have kind of the bare minimum. Glad we have that, but I think those are the kinds of things that really help our working families.
These are more on the House side, but there's several different bills that would limit the governor's authority to make appointments to certain boards and commissions. Namely the Turnpike Authority, the Veterans Commission, the State Board of Education, and then of course over here Senator Thompson has a bill that would take away his power to appoint the director of the tourism department. I know that Democrats were against giving the governor more power when he first took office. Now what would you say to Republicans? Do you think they learned their lesson? Or?
Well, the first thing I would say, it's really hard not to be like, I told you so, because very much when these bills came through, we pointed out the challenges with having one single person approving contracts. Literally when we saw those bills for tourism and the healthcare authority, we removed, and Department of Transportation, we removed the board and made it director. So the director's authorizing every one of those contracts. And we knew that that was dangerous and that that was questionable. And I think whether there's actual fraud or just lack of transparency and lack of public process, either one of those are problems when it comes to good government. So, those specific proposals I haven't looked at for the individual boards, but I think in general that we did too much. We're not able to get the information we need to get. And we have very large agencies running with very little public oversight. Anything you'd add?
Happy to help chip away at concentrations of power.
Anything about what about the state board? Anything on the State Board of Education?
I haven't seen that bill.
Yeah.
I don't know. So it was a couple weeks ago. I can't remember what committee it was. Senator Dom had a bill about oil reserves. Do you remember that?
I do remember.
Okay, now you voted for it.
Yeah, title was off.
Okay.
I was okay with it with title off.
I didn't get a lot of details afterwards, too, Carmen, on all that, but it seems like there's a few bills that are kind of, I don't know, I kind of call them like doomsday scenario bills, and like, kind of making sure that Oklahoma can still stand if and when the federal government collapses. I don't know, have you seen legislation like that? And
It's a pattern. Yeah.
Okay, and you said you voted against, title was off on that one.
I was okay with it with title off. It's very aspirational. I doubt it goes anywhere.
Yeah, okay. But you said you've seen kind of this pattern.
There's a pattern.
Why do you think that is? What do you think we're seeing?
Maybe as a companion piece. I remember in the author's bill explanation, there was something about Biden's oil. We didn't want to use Biden's oil. We wanted to use our oil. To me, it's a little hyperbolic. But I think as a companion to our legislature's efforts to constantly be pushing back against the federal government and federal overreach, I think they're probably running these bills right alongside them to make sure that we can take care of our own in the midst of us pushing back against the federal government. I'm not in agreement with most of these.
Yeah.
But with title off, I was okay with
Yeah. And that was a crude oil, right? I mean,
What is it?
It was crude oil.
It was
so
crude
it wouldn't
oil,
be,
yeah.
I mean, there wouldn't be an emergency refinery process probably.
There was not a well-developed plan at all. Perhaps the author will be very busy on that for the rest of the session.
I mean, he had several bills that we haven't heard in military, and I hope we don't hear, but related to National Guard becoming a militia and things like that.
Yeah.
That seem to imply that we would not have the federal government as a partner in government.
And I hesitate to ask because, like I said, I don't think they will go anywhere. But it just seems like you're hearing a lot of these more. It just seems
It's
like
a theme.
it just yeah.
Yeah.
I've gotten bills in support. I mean, messages from constituents in support of some of those.
Yeah.
Anything else? Thank you for coming, y'all. Appreciate it.
Thank